Ladies and gentlemen, we now have another guest joining us, and she's Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, Executive Chairperson, Biocon. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us on ET Now. There are several measures and several initiatives that have been announced in today's budget announcement, especially for cancer patients. I mean, cancer care centers are to be established in all Indian districts is one, and of course, there's several others. How are you really seeing these announcements?
So when I look at the announcement made for cancer drugs, whilst it's certainly very important to waive the basic customs duty for many of these life-saving drugs for cancer, rare diseases, and chronic diseases, I hope that it carries into GST as well for indigenously available medicines for cancer, rare diseases, and these chronic diseases. Because I think if patient benefit is the objective, then I think patients who will benefit from duty exemptions of very expensive drugs that they've listed is not going to serve too many patients. But I think if you allow GST exemption on all cancer drugs and on chronic diseases which are costing patients a lot every month, then I think it will make a huge impact, is what I believe. But I think I also welcome some of the other measures that the budget announced, that is about, providing access for, these cancer patients in rural areas, where I think, many of these measures that the government has announced is very welcome. Setting up these daycare cancer centers in all district hospitals. I think those are good measures. Also, making sure that you have broadband at primary healthcare centers across the country, especially in rural India. All these are very positive measures. So in terms of my particular interest in innovation, I think I welcome the finance minister announcing 20,000 crores as an outlay for private sector innovation, but I would like to see the details of this particular deployment of this large fund. I think we really need to move from volume to value, um, and from back office to IP creation. So I think we need to do all this.
Absolutely, ma'am, and we'll have to see how that really sort of changes things on the ground and how is that really operationalized and activated. But the announcements will definitely help people. But the big question is the announcements. How are these going to help the industry grow?
The way I look at it is that the healthcare industry has to innovate. Okay, the healthcare industry has to invest more in R&D. And if the innovation fund is going to help the healthcare industry to innovate in R&D, it's not just the pharmaceutical industry, but it's like, the med tech sector, obviously the pharma sector and the diagnostic sector. So I think if all of these can avail of that innovation fund, then I think we will be in a good place. But I also want to hear more about, what are we doing for exports? I mean, the finance minister clearly laid out exports as a key objective. But, she fell short of basically saying how we could boost exports. So I would like to, hear this aspect of, the finance minister's thinking about how we boost exports, how we boost investments. Of course, consumption is going to get a good fillip because the move to basically increase the slab to 12 lakhs is very welcome, because hopefully that extra money in the hands of the middle classes will improve consumption. But I think when I look at the budget overall, we need to look at it in context of the global economy, right? Global economic slowdown is a worry. Geopolitics and geoeconomics are actually becoming very difficult to understand. There's a huge move to localize a lot of manufacturing. How does India respond to that? How does India actually benefit from that. These are the things we need to look at in the way we are looking at our budgetary allocations. So I really think we need to negotiate from a point of strength where we have critical technologies, where we have strengths in certain technologies. I'm glad that the government has talked about nuclear energy and encouraging the private sector to develop mini nuclear plants. I think that's very innovative, and I think that's something which is very interesting. But what about other sectors? Are we going to have uh, a mission mode kind of investment in certain key emerging areas? I didn't hear that from the finance minister. Maybe there's something on the anvil. Most of all, I think I'm eagerly awaiting the announcement of the new income tax bill. Is there something for corporate India? Because corporate India tax rates also have to be competitive. So these are some of the things that I would like addressed.
Absolutely, ma'am. Some very valid points that you've made in that point about, manufacturing being boosted across countries, across geographies. And of course, India needs to see developments in that light is a very valid point because we've seen Vietnam also becoming a beneficiary of China Plus One. So India will need to really do a rethink on how to sort of navigate all of those realities. But budget allocation, coming back to the healthcare sector and what budget allocation had, it was up 11%. But do you think more was needed? Do you think the budget has not considered global factors like what's happening in the United States?
See, I think the finance ministry is very, very, focused on the whole the US-India trade, bilateral trade, sort of engagement. So I don't think, the budget has, failed to do that. I think the budget is very aware of what it needs to do. So I think increasing the insurance, foreign investment in insurance sector to 100% is something that will be welcomed by everyone. But having said that, I think we really need to look at uh, the global economic scenario and make sure that all our policies are, one of the things that I was also very interested to hear was that there's a strong focus on regulatory reforms. I think we have to make sure that ease of doing business from an investment point of view has to be addressed very aggressively. And that's, I think, what the finance minister has said, that she will set up a regulatory reforms committee. And I really hope, industry, members will be inculcated into or included in that committee. Because I think, people who understand regulations are the ones who actually are regulated. And often they are left out when it comes to coming up with any regulatory reforms. And that mistake should not occur this time.
Absolutely, ma'am. And this is something that the chief economic advisor also stated in his speech yesterday, that trust-based economic governance needs to be promoted. And of course, a trust-based regulatory framework is something that is needed. Now, FDI in insurance, let me get your thoughts on that. That has been increased. How do you see this development will help the insurance as well as the healthcare industry? And how do you expect that to change the domestic dynamics?
Certainly think it will, because the healthcare industry in general needs a lot of insurance linkages and insurance support. Look at cell and gene therapy. It's a very expensive therapy, but with an insurance, mechanism, I think it can really be a very, very important part of the medical tourism or the health tourism that the finance minister referred to.
In fact, ma'am, the industry was also expecting PLI on anti-diabetic and weight loss medication, but nothing has been announced so far. Has that been a dampener, and how do you see this? And how much was it needed?
Well, I'm not so concerned about PLI because I think the pharma industry has got PLI schemes, and I'm sure PLI schemes will be extended as and when it is required. But more importantly, I think we need an RLI scheme or a research-linked incentive scheme for industry. I continue to remain very, very focused on the fact that the India pharma business has to move towards value creation through IP. And that's where you need more R&D. We need to identify some of these areas where we can compete from a position of strength. And IP is a very powerful way to compete from a position of strength.
All right, Ms. Shaw, those were some sector-specific questions, but let me ask you whether the budget has done enough to revive domestic consumption and demand. Demand has been slowing, especially in urban centers, and of course that was one key ask from different sectors. So does the budget really address that one key challenge?
So I think that's the big question that still is unanswered. Has the budget done enough? It's a good budget. It's a reassuring budget. It's a stable budget when you look at inclusive economic growth. You have touched upon all the important growth drivers in terms of where you want to invest. But have we done enough? That is a question I think is still unanswered.